Hey students, we are on lesson 4-8 and it is use number sense to multiply decimals. We're on page 157. You will need your workbook and a pencil, so go ahead and get that out and then we'll work through some problems. Here's our learning goal. I can use number sense to multiply decimals. Again, we are on page 157. This is our solve and share. Let's go ahead and read through it together and then I'll give you a little bit of time to try it on your own. 3 students in Miss Cho's class wrote the following problems on the board. The correct digits in the product are given, so that means the correct numbers are there, but the decimal point isn't placed yet. Where should the decimal point go in each? So here we're using a little bit of number sense to see, kind of using our estimation skills to see about how large the number should be and then where our decimal should go. This won't always work with however many numbers are in the decimal or the factors are in our answer because they might have eliminated a 0 that could be on the end of the number because that would just make an equivalent decimal. So we have to use a little bit more reasoning skills. So our number 1 is 7 85/100 times 16 and our digits are 1, 2, 5, 6. So all 4 of those are in the right order, right spot. You just have to decide where that decimal is going to go. Our next one is 98/100 times 5/10, and we've got 49 there. And so those digits and numbers are in the right spot, but we need a decimal. And then our last one is 1 600 times 1 5/10. And our answer is 159. And so again, we were just trying to figure out where that correct decimal goes. So go ahead and try to solve through. Place the decimal in those answers, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. So for this one, we have 7 85/100 times 16. So what I could do is use a little bit of rounding in order to solve this. I could make my 7 and 8, and I could even just do 16 times 8 off to the side really quick. So 8 times 6 is 48, 8 plus 4 is 12. So about 128 should be my answer. Well, if I look at this, I have a 125 right there. So my decimal is going to fill in right there. You could have also just thought, okay, well, if I'm doing 16 times about 8, I'm not going to have 12 as my answer, which was your other option, and 1,000 would be way too big. So we had to get it between the 5 and the 6. Okay, for our next one, we've got 98/100 times 5/10. Okay, and so 98/100 is really close to 1, and if I do 1 times 5/10, my answer is going to be 5/10. And so what you know about decimal numbers is we can add zeros to make equivalent decimals. It doesn't change the value, it just makes the pieces smaller. And so 50/100, well, 49 right there, that's telling me my decimal is going to go before that number. Now I would add in a 0, so we see that placeholder. So we have 0 and 49/100 for that one. Our last one, we have about 1 times about 1.5. So if I had 1 times about 1.5, my answer would be about 1.5. Again, you know, with our equivalent decimals, you can add zeros after our last decimal number, and it makes the pieces smaller, but it's the same amount. So in here, if I have a decimal 1.50, well, I can see pretty easily that my decimal is going to go right in there. Okay, let's go work through our visual learning bridge. Okie dokie. You have learned how to estimate when multiplying with decimals. You can also use number sense to reason about the relative size of factors in the product. You can use number sense to put the decimal point in the correct place. So here's an example problem. They have 49 20/100 times 55/100. And we've got 27 6/100. And so remember when I told you when you're multiplying by about 5/10 or half, you're going to cut that first number in half. So I bet some of you can already start to think through where our decimal is going to go. So think about the relative size of the factors. Multiplying a number by a decimal less than 1, I've said this over and over again, gives a product less than the other factor that you're multiplying by. Since 55/100 is less than 1, the product will be less than 49 2/10. So okay. So since 55/100 is about 1/2, the product is about half of 49 2/10, or about half of 50 if we were going to use a little bit of rounding there. So the decimal point should be between our 7 and our 0. Sorry, because about half of 50 is about 25. Well, 27 is really close to 25. So how can we place the decimal point in the product of the equation below? So we have 6 2/10 times 5 1/10 is, and we've got 3, 1, 6, 2. And so the digits are correct, the order is correct. We're just putting in that decimal. It says, notice that the smallest unit in both factors is a tenth. Since the product of 1/10 and 1/10 is 1/100th, the product of 6 2/10 and 5 1/10 will have 2 decimal places. So here they're using bloop, bloop, how many decimal places to help us reason it. But if you look at it, you could have also just done 6 times 5. Well, that's 30. You can do that pretty quickly. And so, well, I've got 31 right here. So we know it's going to plug in there. You could also look at like, okay, there's 2 decimal places. There's 2 decimal places. But honestly, I think multiplying that 6 by that 5 was the easiest route to go. And then you know that's 30, 31, super close to 30. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and work through. We are over on page 159. We're just going to do a couple problems real quick about placing our decimal, and then we will talk about one in group. So let's look at number 2. Janelle wrote 23 4/10 for the product of 7 8/10 times 3/10. Use number sense to decide if Janelle placed the decimal point in the correct place in the product. If incorrect, give the correct product. So what we have here is we've got, remember, it's the right digits, right order. We just got to double check that decimal point. So we have 7 8/10 times 3/10. Well, what I've said over and over this unit, when I multiply a factor by a factor less than 1, our answer is going to get smaller. I hope you all said smaller. So 7 8/10 is going to be bigger than our answer. Our answer is going to be smaller than 7 8/10. Well, is 23 4/10 smaller? No. So what I know we need to do is put our decimal 1 spot over. So incorrect. And so it would be 2 34/100 because 2 is a lot less than 7 8/10, and we're multiplying it by 3/10. And then you could also double check, well, we've got 2 numbers in our factors. This won't always work, but especially if they like, took off a 0 at the end in their answer. And so I have 2 now in my answer. Okie dokie. Let's try 1 or 2 over here, and then I will give you one to try on your own. 5 times 3 4/10 equals 1, or we've got a 1 and a 7, and we're trying to decide where to place it. So if I did 5 times about 3, so I'm using a little bit of rounding, my answer would be 15. So my decimal point here is going to go after the 7. Yeah, I think we can just put it in there. There we go, after the 7. Okay, so this one they've switched around the problem, but we're doing the same thing. So here's our answer or our product. Here's our factors. We have 3 1/10 times 6 2/10. So again, you could think, okay, 3 times about 6. That's going to be 18. Well, I've got 19 right there, so we can just put it between the 9 and the 2. Our last one, it gets a little harder when we have both like parts of a whole. So we have 6/10 times 4/10. So we're multiplying a very small number by a number that's less than 1, so our answer is going to get even smaller. So I know it's not going to be 24. It's not going to be 2 4/10. It's going to be 24 hundredths because we are multiplying a tenth by a tenth. I know I'm going to get into the hundredth spot for 24 hundredths. And so you can even think about this one like, well, I have 2 decimal points in my factor, so I'm going to have 2 in my answer. Oh, I did them all. So you, I guess, are off the hook today. Maybe I'll just write one on here and let's just do that. Let's try number 7. So number 7 down below says 6 22/100 times 3 equals 1866. So use what you know about rounding and place value to see where the decimal would go in this answer. This is number 7 down below. So try number 7 and we'll talk about it in group. Okay.